Okay, we're here at Picker's Parts and we're going to wire up a 7-way switching system. It has a 5-way traditional Strat switch and a push-pull with a standard 250K pot. And in this particular configuration we have a Fender TBX tone control, which will control the bridge and middle pickups. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and the way we prefer to do it is to start with the TBX kit. So I like to bend the capacitor like this. As you can see, it's kind of flat. And then you'll find that one of your friends, while soldering, is just a basic roll of masking tape. As you can see, the masking tape holds your components down nicely, and it doesn't leave any residue on your electronic equipment or components. So I like to solder with a fan to keep the solder smoke away from my face as much as possible. Cut off the excess. Don't be afraid to bend the prongs so that you can work with your component. You can always bend it back after you're done soldering. And when soldering, basically I like to put the solder in position and then heat it with the soldering iron, and it liquefies quite nicely. And when soldering, make sure you have a wet sponge to keep your tip clean. This will prove to be quite important. You don't want old solder as you're trying to put on new components to your system. It just makes for a very messy soldering work. Then you can bend your prongs back. And with the TBX kit, I like to put the resistor off to the side here and then bend the resistor prong or lead parallel to the existing capacitor. From here I'll cut the leads. And ensure they're in place. And then in this particular case, I will warm the can a little bit and then bring the solder to it, and then as you can see, it will go right onto the pot and melt. From here, I will wire the TBX to the switch. In this particular case, we're using 0.20 wire gauge. One of the things that you'll find is some type of tool. In this particular case, can help you bend the wires. If you don't have such a tool, then you can use a smaller screwdriver. You can use it to hold the wire and bend it as you need, so you can get a nice U or J hook, however you like to call it. And because it does take a second, sometimes two, for the solder to firm up, you can use that to your advantage to position the cable or wire to your liking before it dries. In this particular case, I like to use just the basic lead wire. And it's jumper wire, some people call it. And on these short connections, on the blade switch, it really just helps it to become much cleaner rather than using so much wire. Solder it into place. As you can see, it's nice and clean. When soldering to the blade switch, I make sure that I don't use excessive amounts of solder. What happens is they can drip down, the solder can drip down the prongs, and as it drips down the prongs, it can go into the switching area where the mechanical portion is and freeze it, and then you have ruined your switch. So be very conservative in soldering here. You definitely want to cover your wire, of course, and get a solid solder connection. However, you don't want to be so liberal that it drips down into this area down here and then freezes this portion. So at this point, we will make the jump from this prong to this prong and then connect it to the 7-way. Solder first, heat the solder, let it melt. So now we're attaching the jumper to the 7-way. So in this particular case, the ground will connect in the middle. I love using this jumper wire because it makes a lot of these smaller connections very easy. Measure into place, cut, and then solder it right here. Now we're going to run a jumper to ground this prong. And we'll solder it right to the side of the cane. At this point, we'll go ahead and complete the 7-way setup exchange. And I like to use this small lower left prong here. In this case, it's helpful to pre-tin that prong and then likewise pre-tin your wire. And then solder it into place. In these closer quarters, we like to use heat shrink tubing to protect that connection. Then we run it off to the side, lower left. If you have that tape handy, just hold that wire to the lower left there. And just a little dab of solder. Again, to protect the integrity of the connections there. So, heat shrink tubing. Now for this 7-way TBX harness, we only have a few components left to do. The grounding wires and capacitor. Again, pre-tin. And then I like to use this location here, this little pointed lip that's on the end of the 7-way push-pull switch. It gets hot quick and it's easy to solder to. You can snip off any excess. Then we do the grounds to each can. And I get my friendly tape to hold it into place. Hold the wire into place. And then I solder one ground and the other end of the capacitor lead to the can. In this particular one, I have to apply a little bit of pressure, push it down, Let it heat up for a moment, and then apply some solder liberally to the point where it drips onto the can. Then I let it go. And as you can see, comes out okay. At this point, I just measure this last connection here. Heat the can up, drop into place. And there you have it, the 7-way TBX harness for your Stratocaster by Pickers Parts.